instead of telling yourself, I'm one of the Lord's servants that represents him and knows how to boldly testify of the gospel, it's, I'm disgusting, I'm worthless,
Right.
I don't have any value, I'm never going to change. Something's wrong with me personally. And it's really, really hard, emotionally and mentally.
We are Saints in the South, your source for gospel growth and good times. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Saints in the South. Today, we have an opportunity to speak with a special guest, a man by the name of Colton Miller. So we're going to take the opportunity to introduce Colton to all of you. If you haven't heard of Colton or seen him on Instagram, take the opportunity to listen to what he has to say here, and we'll turn it over to Kenny here for a second to do a little introduction.
Yeah, if you're not familiar with Colton, I highly recommend it, man. I've really been enjoying his videos on Instagram. So his Instagram bio is interesting to me. He says, member of the Church of Jesus Christ, recently salvaged my faith, sharing how I'm finally and triumphantly staying sober from pornography and family. I'm like, dude, there's so many questions I want to ask about that. And so I like to find positive content online. You know how the algorithms, they show me enough to get me aggravated, so I try to look for the positive. And so I ran across one of Colton's videos one day and I was like, man, this guy is, dude, he's got some good points, man. It's really, I loved his delivery. He's got a really calm, very clear delivery. He counters different arguments in a really clear yet bold way. And so I was like, man, I need to check this guy out. So I kind of went to his channel and scrolled through and watched several of his videos and was like, man, this guy's awesome, man. I'm really enjoying this. So I hit the subscribe button, So then I texted Jackson. I was like, man, you got to check this guy out, man. It's Colton Miller. Jackson was already following you. He's like, oh yeah, I've been following Colton for a while, man. That guy's great.
That's awesome.
So yeah, we've really been enjoying it. And so yeah, we just wanted to take this opportunity to introduce you to those of our audience who might not be familiar with you, and kind of go from there. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Colton?
Yeah, so good Mormon boy, grew up in Manti, Utah. My dad grew up there, born and raised. My grandpa born and raised there. His dad before him, and so on, kind of a thing.
Hardy pioneer stock, huh?
Yeah, some hardy. There's a lot of Millers and Olsons and Coxes in Manti and Sanpete County, right around there. But yeah, I mean, I loved the church growing up. Loved going to the Boy Scouts on Wednesday nights. We had a ton of fun going on campouts down in southern Utah and at national parks, and just a lot of people that I looked up to, and just amazing people that there was just an awesome community of faithful saints in that area. And I think just ever since I was a kid, I always just believed. And I guess I would say there was a couple of really poignant experiences that I had growing up that made me kind of make the determination that I wanted to serve a mission. One of them was, I can't remember exactly how old I was, but my older brother, his name's Brendan, but he goes by Odie. And he's not really a rough character. He's a really, really good guy. He's got a big heart. But kind of hung out with a little bit different crowd than maybe I did growing up. And anyways, he had just graduated high school, or was out for a year or so, and he took my dirt bike out west of town, and it's just a desert there and sagebrush and not a whole lot going on. He went out there with his buddy and found this rattlesnake that was pretty big, 4.5 feet long, had a nice big rattler on it. And he thought, well, I need to catch this and go and show my buddy Darren, and he'll be real impressed by this snake.
What could possibly go wrong, right?
Yeah. So
A lot braver than I am, for sure.
it's kind of a wild story. So he catches it. No, nothing happens. And for some reason, he decides while he's riding this motorcycle that it'd be better to have the snake in his clutch hand than in his throttle hand. So while he's riding over to his buddy, he switches the rattlesnake into his clutch hand, and still nothing happens. And he gets to his buddy Darren, and his buddy's like, "You're an idiot. Why are you messing with rattlesnakes?" And so he shows him, and it's when he let it go, it recoiled, and he didn't get his hand back quick enough, and he got hit with one fang in like kind of the palm of his thumb.
Ooh.
And his buddy Darren was training to be a medic in the Army, so they had this under control. So they went to Top Stop, which is the only gas station in town. We don't even have a stoplight in town. They got a bag of ice and some aspirin. And that's not how you take care of rattlesnake bites. My mom was a registered nurse at the time, and after a couple of hours, my brother realized, hey, my arm is like really swelling up bad. He goes home, and I've never seen my mom frantically throw him in the car, and I've never seen her drive that fast in my life to the local hospital in Mount Pleasant, Utah, and then they life flighted him. And anyways, I just remember that was one of the first powerful spiritual experiences I had, because as a family, we prayed for my brother. And I remember the next day we went up to the hospital to visit him. And I mean, his arm was like 22 inches around. Like I'm going to the gym working out, and I wish I could get arms big like that.
That's not the way to do it, though.
It's not it's not really happening. But he had a lot of vials of antivenom, and it just didn't seem like much was working. And I think it was like 21 vials of antivenom. It was bad. And wow. The swelling was getting clear up. His shoulder started getting, I mean, it's right there in a really bad spot. And I just remember seeing it. It's kind of like a surreal experience, but my oldest sister had a couple of return missionary friends that came over, and I just remember watching them give him a blessing, and it was just a really powerful experience. And from that point on, I was like, I'm going to be a missionary. I want the priesthood. I want to be able to do this. So,
and how old were you at the time?
Early teens.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly how old, but I'd have to probably ask my mom. But yeah, it was pretty young.
Okay.
But that was a really powerful experience. And then, kind of later in high school, I never really took church very serious. But when I was 17, all of my friends that I hung out with had read the Book of Mormon, and I had never read it before. So I was like, I feel left out. Let me read this so I don't feel like a dummy. And I had release time seminary, and it was my first class of the day.
Peer pressure right there. I like it.
Yeah. So yeah, that worked out good. And my bishop was actually my seminary teacher. And anyways, I decided I'm just going to start getting up a little bit early for school and just start reading the Book of Mormon cover to cover. And I just remember after a couple of weeks, I was like, I think I want to set my alarm a little bit earlier, and because I want to read a little bit more. And it was just one of the best experiences of my life, just learning the gospel and feeling the Spirit move across the pages of the Book of Mormon into my heart and into my mind, and writing down questions and going to my seminary teacher, who was my bishop at the time, and asking him all these questions. And I always tell people one of the first times I cried when I read the Book of Mormon was actually when Nehor slew Gideon. I just remembered sitting on my bed reading that, and I was just like, what is wrong with me? Why am I bawling? And I just knew that story was true. And there's just, the first time you read it, there's a couple of verses that you read that just stick with you for life. And so just really powerful experience. So it was those two things, and I knew, hey, I'm gonna serve my mission based on those two things. But really beyond that, I was kind of a dummy, didn't really know much. So
well, you've come a long way.
Line upon line. That's what I have a testimony of. Yeah.
Awesome. So where did you serve your mission?
So Nebraska. Yeah. I grew up a BYU fan because my oldest brother is a big diehard BYU fan, and then got called to Nebraska, so I became a Husker fan, and then
Cornhusker, that's right.
Now I live in Arkansas, and I'm a Razorback fan.
Hey, listen, you finally made it to the SEC, so you're good to go.
But I'm still a has-been football team fan, is what it's kind of shaken out to be, because none of the teams that I follow ever do very, very great.
So what brought you to Arkansas though, Colton?
So I got recruited to do the summer sales pest control gig. Obviously living in Utah, you can't really escape getting recruited to do that.
Right.
I did a summer in North Carolina in 2015, Houston in 2016, DFW 2017. And then by that time I was married, I had a kid, and my best friend, I had kind of twisted his arm and drug him along with me to do it. And we decided we're kind of tired of making money for other people, and we think we can do this on our own. And we made a really good friend in DFW while we were working that said, hey, Northwest Arkansas is an awesome place. He had a ton of experience in, operations side of a business and everything. And all we knew how to do is knock doors and convince people to give us their credit card and sign a contract. So he helped us get things off the ground, and we moved out here at the end of 2017. So we're going on our 7th year in business out here. But so bugs brought me out to Arkansas, I guess.
Nice. So I need to ask you a question then. How much do you feel like your mission prepared you for your current career?
Oh man, if I could have went and sold pest control door to door for a summer before my mission, it would have, I feel like it would have made a big difference. Just in a little bit of building some confidence and talking to people, but mostly just being able to know how to actually work an area. Like I remember one area on my mission had a pretty small geographic area, and we felt like we had talked to everybody, but with some of the tools and stuff that I had selling pest control, you can drop a pin on a house and write down a note and know exactly what the conversation was about, if they were interested in pest control or not. And I feel like I could have farmed that area a lot better than I did. And I recommend it to everybody. So anybody that listens to this that has kids about to go on mission, send them my way. And usually they'll pay for their mission in a summer working with me. So
hey, that's nice.
I've got 2 nephews that that returned and went and did pest control. And I don't know who they're doing it for, but I think they're actually still doing it and stuff. So doing that selling.
There's a book. I can't remember the author. I think it's called Doing Business the Mormon Way. There's a guy that interviewed a bunch of, apparently there's a lot of successful Latter-day Saints. There are successful CEOs of businesses and, entrepreneurs and things, very kind of like, and there's a lot of conspiracy theories about that too. Kind of like how, the Jews are taking over because they're all successful businessmen and all this jazz. But so this guy recognized the phenomenon and wrote a book, and I wish I could remember it. But anyway, one of the things that I remember was that out of all the people he interviewed, one of the questions he asked them is, what, if anything, about serving, or no, no, he asked them about the church. Is there anything about your membership in the church that you feel like helped you to become successful in business? And he said, without exception, every single one of them said, my mission. Because they learned how to cooperate with it. They learned how to have a companion and work together with somebody, whether you could get along with them or not. You learned how to have a door slammed in your face and keep on going. And, there's all these lessons that you learn, from serving a mission skills that can be transferred over into business and the real world and things like that.
No, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I absolutely loved my mission. My dad's kind of a glass half empty kind of guy. He served in Fort Lauderdale in the 70s, and he was a little older when he left. He was like 23 or something, and you know, couple of clean shaven, nice short haircut kids walking around in the 70s in Florida. People called him all sorts of names and stuff, and it was a tough mission for him. And he told me this is how it's really going to be, and I appreciate that, because when you show up on your mission, you realize not all missionaries are created equal. Not all of them are out there for the right reasons. Not all of them have had a spiritual conviction that the gospel's true and Christ is their savior. And but I loved my mission, and I think about it all the time. I was just thinking about one of the people that I taught in my mission today, and it just almost brought me to tears because of just the awesome experience that it was to teach them. And that's what's kind of crazy about what kind of happened to me. Like on my mission, my trainer, when I showed up, he had this little index card box full of cards, and in his personal study every morning, I would just see him flipping through all these cards. And I learned that he was actually memorizing scripture, and he had like a system of how he would memorize and a schedule. And I was really prideful and didn't really want to do it, just because out of spite, because we kind of butted heads a little bit. But as soon as I sent him home, I killed him. So it was his last transfer was the transfer I got trained. But as soon as he was gone, I went and got a box and I started doing it because I thought it was so cool. And I did it for like 10 months of my mission, and I ended up memorizing like 500 passages of scripture.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that was just, but by the end of my mission, I was just like, man, there is nothing that could stop me. Like, I'm an unstoppable spiritual force. Like, I am spiritually yoked. I'm freaking jacked out of my mind. I know the scripture. You know what I mean? And that's kind of when it's funny, because the adversary really knows how to work on each of us. And that's what kind of started happening to me, is because of my pride and my arrogance and my overconfidence in my testimony. I thought, hey, I don't really have to sustain this as much. And I like section 4 of the Doctrine and Covenants. It talks about how you have to lay up for yourselves, you just constantly have to harvest, and through all these different attributes, you kind of build up this stockpile. But if you're not constantly building up that stockpile, you're taken from it. And that's kind of what just happened. Is I got busy, I got married, I started a business, and it was 2022. I'd been home from my mission for 8 years, and I hadn't read the Book of Mormon cover to cover in 8 years. I'd been going to church because, it was just a social thing, and I really loved the ward that we were in. We'd made a ton of really good friends, and our area got whitewashed, and the missionaries that showed up I could just tell they were really awesome missionaries. And I was like, hey, I've made some friends. It's time to share the gospel with some of my friends. So I tried to set up a couple meetings, and I would go to these lessons, and I would try and testify of the Book of Mormon, and it just felt hollow to me. And I just didn't feel like there was any substance behind what I was saying. And I was just like, I'm literally just parroting what I used to say when I was a missionary, when I actually believed it. And that was really hard for me. And I had a friend that recommended this TikTok to me. That's this Bible scholar. And I actually kind of had a hard time with the article of faith about, we believe the Bible to be the word of God as far as it's translated correctly. On my mission, I used to almost hold the Bible a little bit higher than the Book of Mormon. But I started following this guy, and it was just like, I didn't know anything about the Bible. The last 12 verses of Mark were added on by scribes later on. So the original manuscript of Mark didn't even have any witnesses of the resurrection, and scholars have a lot of opinions about that. I didn't realize that Luke wasn't, the apostle that walked with Christ. He was just a physician that worked with Paul and never even met Christ. And Luke and Matthew basically used the manuscript of Mark to make their own, gospel. A lot of this stuff and all these different added verses. And that was the first time in my life I was ever like, wow, I wonder if Christ actually rose from the dead. Like these people are saying, it's pretty likely that they just wanted to keep the story alive, so they added this stuff in there. And so
yeah, I took a New Testament class in my undergrad, and there was a lot of that was the first time I encountered the phrase the Jesus of history versus the Christ of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned all that stuff you're talking about there. It was all really interesting. Luckily for me, I went back to school late in life, so I was already very established in my faith, and it would have taken a lot to shake it. But it's really interesting learning all the little details of the Bible and things that don't go along with what people think it's a certain way and it's not. And there's even some scholars even question the authorship. I mean, there's even some of the books that, some scholars theorize were written by women, and there are lots of really interesting stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, what do they call it? Pseudepigrapha, or basically just, forgeries, or, made up, like, I just never knew any of that stuff. But I also kind of got sucked into a different part of TikTok, which had to do with the church and Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon. And I never really had a problem with a lot of church history stuff. But the only thing on there that really bothered me that I learned was that just because I had such a strong testimony of the priesthood from that experience with my brother getting hands laid on his head and healed from that rattlesnake bite, was that I learned there wasn't any record of the Melchizedek priesthood being restored to the prophet Joseph Smith by Peter, James, and John for like 4 or 5 years after it happened. And I was just like, why wasn't that recorded right away? Like, that's pretty significant. And, I started kind of letting some of these doubts creep in, and I had a salesman that had worked for me that was a return missionary whose grandfather was a Baptist preacher, evangelical preacher. And it was really, when he converted to the church, it was basically really traumatic for him. But he ended up going back and becoming, this born again evangelical. And I remember messaging him one day and just on Messenger, and I was just like, man, I don't even know what I believe. Like, I don't know if I believe in the Book of Mormon. I don't know if I believe in Christ rising from the dead. Like, and I just remember being like, why am I even going to church? Like, I'm literally going to, I started making some money, and, I come time since I run my own business, I don't really, I kind of wait until I get my taxes figured out to reconcile the previous year's tithing. So it's kind of a weird thing. And it's around this kind of time period, and I was just like, I don't know. I don't even know if I'm going to pay my tithing. It was just like, I was really on the fence, and I just decided, you know what? I'm going to give this one last shot. I'm going to read the Book of Mormon cover to cover and see what it's all about, actually. And before I make any decisions, and I made this commitment to myself. I'm going to pray and ask if Joseph Smith was called by God to be a prophet. I'm going to pray and ask specifically if he translated the gold plates using a seer stone. I'm going to ask if the priesthood was restored to him from Peter, James, and John, etc. I'm going to ask if President Nelson is still the prophet today. And I got really specific with it. And I remember reading First Nephi. This is kind of how it was, kind of from a skeptical perspective. And I was pulling up all these articles about, like what was going on in Jerusalem at that time, as far as like socioeconomically, and reading all this stuff about King Zedekiah and Jehoiakim and all this stuff. And a lot of it was from the BYU website. And I thought it was interesting, reading First Nephi, and it was like, there's a couple things that Nephi and Lehi are talking about that I don't think they would have known about if they didn't really live in Jerusalem and kind of know what was going on and know what the scene was. And so I was like, this is kind of interesting. And I don't even know how much further I got, but by the time you get through Mosiah and start into Alma, I just overwhelmingly had this the most impactful experience, or part of it, was just realizing how much I had forgotten was in the Book of Mormon, how much was taught. I forgot the stories that were shared, the faithfulness of the saints back then, and it just made me sick to my stomach, and it just broke my heart that for 8 years I had not read it and gotten to a point where I'd forgotten all of these amazing things that were in this record, all the testimony of Christ, all of these miraculous stories and experiences that the people had. And I had some awesome new revelatory experiences. There was some new stories and verses that jumped out to me that it had never really stood out to me before, and just really powerful spiritual experiences. But overwhelmingly, I just realized I had forgotten the gospel. I had forgotten what the truth was. And I just realized that that's what Satan, that was his whole ploy against me, was let's feed his ego right after his mission and make him feel like he's unstoppable and nothing can get in the way of his faith, and just keep letting him tell himself that he has a lot of scriptures memorized, so he doesn't need to read the scriptures anymore. And just, it was a slippery slope.
Yeah. What's funny is that sounds in one of our Come Follow Me episodes just a few weeks ago, Jackson, you remember we were talking about that exact same thing. Where was it? We were talking about keeping things in remembrance, and just like Colton was talking about, the same exact thing, how the people just forget, the people just get busy and just start doing things. And before you know it, once you start forgetting these things, and you have to actively, I think that was the same episode where Joe was talking about fighting the entropy, because if you're not actively constantly trying to keep your mind refreshed and keep these things fresh in your mind, then naturally the entropy is going to take place, and you're going to start to forget little by little, and these things are going to become distant memories. All these positive and powerful spiritual experiences you had just kind of fade out to the back of your mind.
Yeah, so I'm taking a few notes here, and I picked up on that, your reference to Doctrine and Covenants section 4, where it talks about laying up in store, right? Yeah. And so with our spiritual experiences, what the way you described it was, you had built up a pretty good store and felt like, okay, I'm on top of the world, spiritually speaking. Well, let's go get this thing, and you forgot to replenish. Because as you go throughout your life, and as we go throughout our life, we use up that which we have stored. Okay, you can apply that to food storage, right? Mm-hmm. Eventually you're going to use it all up if you don't replenish it. And so I really love that reference and how you explain that. My follow-up question is, whenever you decided to, okay, I'm going to pray about this and really dive back in here one more time and to figure out whether I believe or not. So we just recorded our Come Follow Me podcast last night, Alma chapter 32, the experiment upon the word, the desire to believe, right? When you decided to do this, was there a desire for it to be true? Were you hoping for it to be true? Were you hoping to receive a positive answer, or were you saying, "I'm going to do this one more time, and so I can say, hey, I've done my due diligence, and that way I don't have to be accountable anymore," or what have you?
I mean, I think I definitely wanted it to be true, and I had a desire for it to be true. And I mean, this was my whole life. I loved the gospel, and but I wanted to feel something again when I went to church. I wanted to be able to go out with the missionaries and boldly testify that the Book of Mormon was the word of God. And that's what bothered me more than anything is as soon as I had that experience where I just kind of felt a little ugh about my testimony of the Book of Mormon with them, I was just like, man, what is wrong with me? I hate this. And it caused a lot of doubt and everything. But as soon as I started reading it again, I just realized how much I absolutely love the Book of Mormon and just love the people and the stories and the testimony. And there's just, how can you read it and believe that Joseph Smith wrote that thing? There's just there's no explanation for that. And so yeah, I absolutely desired to believe, and I've been really looking forward to getting to Alma 32, and even just you reminding me of that phrase, even if you can no more than desire to believe, let that desire work in you.
Right.
That's going to be very reminiscent of how I felt in 2022 about my faith and where I was at. And yeah, I love that.
Well, so it's been that recently. This was 2022, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, looking back, what kept me from probably leaving was just the saints in that ward were just incredible, just humble and full of love, and they just made you feel amazing. And I look back at the years that we were in that ward. We were in there for 5 years, and I kind of relate it to, I wasn't getting any spiritual nourishment during the week, except when I would go, I would feel the Spirit, and I kind of relate it to the only thing that kept me going was I would go there, and it was like I was getting hooked up with an IV drip at church for 2 years. If I hadn't been going and at least feeling the Spirit a little bit and worshiping, and like our priesthood meeting was just amazing the whole time I was there. I absolutely loved it. And if it wasn't for that, I'm just really grateful for those members, and because without them, who knows where I would be now. But
so are you, during this time, are you keeping a lot of this in, or are you sharing this with your wife? What are you doing? Are you sharing it with anybody?
Yeah, I mean, not really anybody at church. Like, I'm the guy that it's dumb because I was the guy, like my brother has a teenage daughter, and they play fast and testimony meeting bingo because they live in St. George. And I always kind of tease my wife that I would probably be on the bingo card as somebody that, like, is Colton going to get up today? He usually gets up. That's kind of just the person I was. And, I've always loved speaking in church. And, at this time, right before I was the executive secretary, I was going to the bishopric meeting, and I was just working through all this, and I'm sure we'll get into talking a little bit more about this, but I also was experiencing a lot of shame because even while I was working in the bishopric as the executive secretary, I was struggling with pornography and all these different things, and felt a lot of shame around, how God viewed me and how I viewed myself, especially. And yeah, I talked to my wife, and I remember after reading Alma 32, and then I think it's Alma 33, there's just a amazing parallel that is drawn where they compare the brazen serpent to Christ, obviously. And just at that, when I read that, and how Alma talked about how all of the prophets, especially Moses, testified of Christ, and all we have to do is look and we'll be healed. That was one of the moments that I had a really powerful experience with the scriptures in the Book of Mormon, especially back in 2022. And I just realized, look, all we have to do to be healed and to be saved is we got to open this book up and just cast our eyes upon the words on its pages and we'll be healed. That's literally all we're asked to do. We just have to look at Christ, and he's not on a brazen serpent today, and we're not plagued with snake bites. I guess sometimes sometimes physical snake bites, but we're plagued by our sins, and if we want to be healed from our sins, we have to look to the scriptures. And I remember going over to my best friend and my business partner's house and just telling him and his wife just my testimony, my renewed testimony of the Book of Mormon, and remember sharing those verses and just yeah, the Book of Mormon I'm in love with.
So before we move a little further, I got to hit a timeout real quick because I've never heard of testimony bingo, but I love the idea, and I'm introducing that to my kids. Absolutely, 100%. Am I the first one? Kenny, have you ever heard of testimony bingo? About
I don't think I've ever heard of. I've heard of general conference bingo.
Yeah, general conference bingo.
I've never heard of testimony
meeting
bingo.
I love it.
Yeah,
it's a good way to stay involved, right?
That's right. I love that.
That's funny. Yeah, there's a lot of retired folks and older folks in his ward, so they kind of have a hoot with it. But
that's funny. Wow,
that's cool. Yeah,
yeah. So maybe get into that a little bit about how you fell into the trap of pornography, and where that led you, and how you got out of it.
Yeah. So there's a experience that I had when I was about 12 years old at Lake Powell that kind of it relates to both of these, my spiritual journey and my faith, and also just my struggles with pornography. And so we had a rule in my family: you can't swim without a life jacket till you're 12. We were at Lake Powell with my dad's best friend, Russell Lund, and we went sightseeing and stopped somewhere for lunch and threw the anchors out, and I hopped out and was swimming, and everybody was kind of eating and still talking. And I remember thinking, man, it would be really cool if I could tread water and pull the anchor up while I'm swimming, and that'd be cool. And
people strength right there.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Aquaman.
People might think I'm really strong and a good swimmer. And anyways, I start pulling up on that thing, and I'm pretty excited because, hey, it's working. I got it to break loose, and it keeps coming up. And then I realized after the first third of it probably came up pretty easy. And I don't know how deep it was where we were at, but I remember getting exhausted by the time the anchor touched my foot. And what had happened is it was a polypropylene rope, and so it floats. And as I was pulling it up, there was just all of these coils of this rope just all around me, just this mess of rope. And I was determined to get it all the way up. And as soon as it touched my foot, just because I was exhausted and I was ready to get back in the boat, I let go of it, and I start watching the little coils of rope go down in the water. And then the next thing I knew, I was just getting dragged underwater. A couple of those coils of rope had grabbed my wrist and started pulling me down. And I just remember shaking my hand as hard as I could. And I don't know how far down I got drugged, probably, 8 to 10 feet, something like that. But it freaked me out. And I just remember swimming to the back of the boat and climbing in and just not saying anything to anybody. And I just share that story because that's pretty much what happened to me after my mission. I was like, hey, I'm a pretty strong swimmer. I can handle this. I can deal with this. I can pull this anchor up all by myself. And I didn't realize that 8 years of carrying my, taken from those stores that I had laid up for myself, I had ended up putting myself in a pretty precarious situation. And I was at a point where I had to just desperately, shake my hand and my wrist. And one last time out of desperation, read the Book of Mormon again and figure out if I believed in it or not. And as far as pornography goes, that's just one of those things that one of the reasons that I want to be vocal about it is just because so many people struggle with it, for one, but also everything that I pretty much was taught my whole life about how to overcome it was just totally bogus. And, I was 8 years old when I was first exposed to it. I was playing with a friend and we were burning worms with matches. So that's about how mature I was.
Yeah.
We were actually trespassing on somebody's property, playing in this barn, burning worms with matches. And we ran out of matches. And so we were looking for more matches, and we found this dresser in this barn. And in the bottom drawer, there was just a bunch of these magazines I'd never seen anything like before. And I didn't even know what it was. I didn't even hear the word pornography until probably a couple of weeks later when one of the other neighborhood boys was talking to his older brother about it. And anyways, I had an experience even when that happened, because that was shortly after I was baptized. I remember knowing that wasn't something I should do. And there was this little tree house next to our house that I climbed up in. And I remember one day saying a prayer and saying, Heavenly Father, I'm never going to go back to that barn, and please forgive me. And I never did go back. But then when I was a teenager, the internet starts being more accessible, and I'm curious. I'm a teenager. I'm going through puberty. I'm experiencing a lot of different things. And, my parents are awesome. I love my parents, but parents need to do a lot better job at teaching their kids, about sexuality and, the birds and the bees, and not be bashful about it and not beat around the bush and be direct and, use the proper terms for things. And anyways, that's where I learned about sex, was from the internet and from friends at school. And I struggled through my teenage years and my sophomore year in high school, and I repeatedly was working with the bishop on this because I knew it was something that I shouldn't be doing. And I was given all these books to read. He Restoreth My Soul, which is a really, really good book. I highly recommend it for somebody that's struggling. But, putting filters on your phone, having an accountability partner, going to the church's group meetings, all these different things, avoiding obviously rated R and TV mature stuff. But anyways, long story short, so I get back from my mission, and that's one of the things that I fell into again was, viewing pornography. And it, man, it's tough when you get back from a mission, from that spiritual high, and then you just all of a sudden fall back into something like this. And instead of telling yourself, I'm one of the Lord's servants that represents him and knows how to boldly testify of the gospel, it's, I'm disgusting, I'm worthless,
right?
I don't have any value, I'm never going to change. What, something's wrong with me personally. And it's really, really hard, emotionally and mentally. And when I was dating my wife, she knew I'd struggled with it, and we were working with a bishop. We got married, and every time I would struggle with it for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, I would always tell her, and then I would go and meet with the bishop once I had enough courage. And that got harder and harder to do the older I got, and the longer I'd been married, and the more kids I'd had, and the more money I started making. And it just got to the point where I'm like, man, like, I'm a grown man. Why am I still dealing with this? Why am I still struggling with this? And anyways, it's, pornography is that same thing. If you want to play with, if you want to pull up the anchor and test your strength in those waters, you're going to eventually come to a crossroads where you're going to have to make a serious decision if you want to, remain faithful to your spouse and all these different things. And I got to a point where my wife was just like, I can't deal with this anymore, because she's experiencing all this betrayal trauma and lack of trust. And
Yeah.
She just says, hey, if you can't get this figured out, like it's not going to be like, I'm not going to be a part of a relationship that this is a part of. And I wanted with all my, is again, one of those things, I'd tried everything. I'd tried every filter, accountability partner, going to men's groups, book clubs, trying to cut things out, and just nothing worked. And so I decided, you know what, I'm shaking my wrist trying to get these flaxen cords off of my wrist. And I made the determination to just go and see a professional. And so I just got online and I just searched, sex therapists, because I didn't know what to even look for. And I emailed a handful of them, and a couple of them got back to me, and I started meeting with one. And I realized a lot of things, that I just had a lot of bad information. First of all, Elder Oaks actually shares a analogy about sin that I love when I talk about overcoming pornography. And it's that all of us are like a big tree, and I guess oak tree, you could say. And,
I like it.
And, we have all got branches, and we're full of leaves. We're beautiful people and creations. And what happens is, with sin, when a big storm comes, the trunk gives way and the leaves get stained with mud or, soil. And in what you're taught when it comes to overcoming pornography is, you got to clean these leaves. You got to do this, and it'll, clean these leaves, and it'll make you feel a lot better. You read this book, you put this filter on, you talk to your bishop. If you just do all of these external things and clean these leaves, that's the solution. And that's what, I'd thought my whole life. But what I realized is that all of our trunks actually have the strength to just not bend in the storm. But when we're filled with shame and negative self-talk, and we tell ourselves that we're worthless, and, that we're disgusting people, and that, we're lustful, and all of these negative things, we're not confident in the strength that we actually have, as we truly are, to be able to just keep ourselves from bending and getting our leaves stained with sin. And I just love that analogy. And that's what I learned. And I know, obviously, this might not be going in the direction that you guys,
okay, just, you good.
That you guys were planning on, but the way that I overcame pornography, and that I'm confident that can help many, many, many other members of the church, is to see a professional counselor that is trained in dealing with betrayal trauma and sexual behaviors and all these different things. And what helped me the most was internal family systems meditations and doing EMDR. And basically, just real quick, going into those, there's this doctor, I think it's his last name Schwartz or something. He came up with internal family systems. Mm-hmm. And it might seem kind of hokey to some people, but basically there's two types of meditations that you do. One of them is a parts meditation. And so what I learned about was, when I was a kid, my parents both worked. My dad worked in a coal mine, worked graveyard, swing shift, day shift. He was never home. And when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, and I needed love and connection and attention and a father, and I didn't have it, I didn't want to stay with those uncomfortable feelings or emotions. Since I since a part of me saw what happened when I viewed pornography in that barn, it realized, hey, this temporarily helps with those feelings that you're uncomfortable with, of not having attention or love or connection or anxiety. And so there's this part, you have all these different parts that compose who you are, and their whole job is just to make you feel better. Basically, they call them firefighters, and the reason they do is because they see a little problem and they just point the fire hose at it to get it taken care of, and it takes care of it temporarily, but it causes more damage than it does help, because of the type of instrument they're using, basically. And so I had to have these meditations where I would actually talk with this part that, would act out sexually and view pornography and masturbate, and tell him, hey, how old do you think I am? And it was interesting because what I realized is he thought I was, just a young teenage boy. And so I would have to update him and say, hey, I'm actually 30 years old. I've been married almost 9 years. I've got 3 kids. I own a successful business. Let me show you what happens when you show up for me like you used to show up for me when I was a kid and help me. In the situation I'm in now, it doesn't help me. And I learned that this part of me.
So were you using like the empty chair technique during that, or how did you implement that?
So my therapist would just it was kind of like a guided meditation. She would give me, the kind of the prompts and just work me through it. And so this is why you got to have somebody that's trained and knows how to do it. But, you learn that all of these parts that show up for you, they actually love you. They're just trying to help you, but they don't realize that they're still helping you the way that they did when you were a child or a teenager. And they need to learn that you're a lot older and what it actually looks like. And basically you just retire them and you let them not have to worry about these things anymore. And the other part that's really powerful, because I always struggle with affirmations. That was another one of those, clean the leaves. Just write down a bunch of affirmations and tell them to yourself in the mirror. Clean the leaves. That'll help you stop viewing pornography if you just say a bunch of affirmations to yourself. And I believed wholeheartedly, and I wanted to believe in the affirmations, but the other meditation that you would do in this IFS is, I just kind of call it inner child meditations, where she'd give me a prompt, let's go to a experience from your childhood where you're feeling loneliness, or you were scared, or someone said something that was hurtful to you. And you would actually go to that little boy, Colton, and I would tell him, hey, it makes sense that you feel the way that you feel from this experience and this scenario that you're in. And I would validate what he was feeling and what he was experiencing. And then I would comfort him and I would say, listen, I'm always going to be here for you. And I would take him places. And it's just funny because I grew up this stuff used to sound really weird and hokey to me, but it seriously just changed my life. But, before you leave these old, younger versions of yourself, you tell them all of the things that you love about them. And then when you come out of that meditation and I'm driving home, it dawns on me, oh my gosh, everything that I told that little boy, I believe about myself. Mm-hmm. And slowly just this fog of shame just starts getting dispersed. And I start realizing who I really am. And I learned to love myself instead of hate myself. And one of the other things, and then if you have any questions, you can ask them, but she had me do is she said one day, I want you to write a letter to God, and I just don't hold anything back. Like, let him have it. You don't need to worry about being cordial or nothing. And then wait 2 days. Don't read your letter you wrote him, and then write a letter to yourself from God. And I was like, whoa, that's kind of interesting.
Did you share this in one of your videos on Instagram? Okay, yeah, this sounds familiar.
Yeah, and the reason I say all of this is because something I didn't realize about repentance, and it's the very first thing in the Bible dictionary it says about repentance, is it designate, or it is reminiscent of a change in something, and it says specifically you attain a fresh view of God and of yourself and of the world. And so through this therapy experience, I obtained a fresh view of myself. I was able to get rid of a lot of the shame, but I still kind of felt like God just didn't really, he just kind of viewed me in a different way, like, oh, Colton's struggling with this, and et cetera, et cetera. And so I wrote the letter, and I waited a couple days, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. This is kind of weird. And anyways, I said a little prayer, and I just closed my eyes with my laptop on my lap, and I just kind of visualized looking down at myself, and just all these words started flowing onto the pages. And I just realized from that experience, I obtained a fresh view about God, and also about how he views me as his child. And it was a really powerful experience. And all of those things have really helped me to finally overcome and give this tree trunk the confidence it has to stand strong, because it already is strong. And when you have the confidence, you no longer end up swaying when the storms come.
Yeah. So,
sorry, that was a lot.
no, that's good. That's good. So Kenny is probably, you can see him kind of shaking his head and everything a little bit. He's a lot more familiar. He's actually in the field. I've got two questions for you, and then I'll let Kenny. I'm going to assume that the professionals you went to were not members of the church.
Yeah, they weren't.
Okay. All right. And that's 100% fine. And I think that's great. Number two, did your bishop or any other ministering individual that you met with or talked to, did anybody ever recommend that you go and seek professional help?
That has never been an experience that I had. And I wish that I had bishops that told me, you need to see a professional, you need to see a counselor.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I had the opportunity to serve as bishop few years ago, and the church is great about extending callings and saying, go do your best. The Lord's on your side. You're called by the Lord to do this work. Mm-hmm. What we tend to fail at is the training, and especially for ecclesiastical leaders, bishops, because you're going to meet with individuals, just like situations like yourself, where I'm not trained to help you overcome this. Yes, I can tell you all the gospel stuff. However, you need to go seek professional help. And so I think every single bishop needs to have on a list, on their phone or what have you, in the area, professional individuals that can help people professionally. 100% agree with that. And they don't have to be members of the church to do that.
Yeah.
And one thing that I just learned the other day, because my current bishop's wife is starting to work with the, church's welfare, whatnot. And I think she's become a LPC or whatnot. And she's like, the church allocates like $5,000 a year for members to see counselors that can't afford it. And yeah, this is something that I think really needs
some areas of opportunity there for sure.
Yeah.
And I was a little side note there. I was actually ward clerk when Jackson was serving as bishop. So I got to be in those bishopric meetings with him. I had a couple thoughts I'd like to hear. Number one, while you were talking, Colton, I'd like to share a quote if I can, that while you were talking about the strength of the trunk and the storm and things, it reminded me of you might have heard this quote. It says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you to not be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. That was from Marianne Williamson from A Return to Love, Reflections on the Principles of A Course to Miracles. And I really, really love that quote. And I had no experience growing up with therapy or anything. I just, it was, matter of fact, I was very distrustful of therapists and psychologists and all that kind of stuff, When my oldest son was born, I was a single father for most of his life, and I always felt like I knew what was best. I always felt pretty confident that I knew what the best way to handle situations were, until he started getting a little bit older and started having some struggles with his own mental health. And all of a sudden I had no idea what to do. And it was really a horrible feeling to feel like here I am, like as a parent, as a father, and I have no idea. I went and talked to my bishop, and I was, like I said, I was not very trustful of therapists or anybody in the mental health field. It seemed like a bunch of malarkey to me. So if my son was going to see somebody, I wanted it to be an LDS therapist, somebody that I could be referred to through the church. And so I contacted my bishop at the time, and he reached out to the temple, and temple went through LDS Family Services and referred me to someone down in Jacksonville Beach. Turned out she was absolutely amazing. Jeanette Smith. She has written articles for church magazines. She's an amazing a marriage and family therapist. Absolutely amazing. And I saw how she was able to help my son when I couldn't, when I was helpless to do, knew and had no idea what to do. Man, my son is going through all this stuff. I don't know, like for the first time in my life, I felt like I'm at a complete loss. I have no idea what to do. And she was able to make such a difference in his life. And it really kind of turned me around. And to be honest, that was part of the experience that put me on the path that I chose to go on. I went back to school, and I got a Bachelor of Science in Psychology, and I went on to graduate school, and I got my Master's of Social Work, and I'm currently working as a therapist at a crisis unit. And I'm getting close to full licensure, where I can operate independently. And one of the things that I would like to do is to be able to do work for the church and be able to help people in the same way that this person was able to help my son when I didn't know what to do. Because having those professionals there, it really is. If you break your arm, you're not going to go. Or I guess I'm going to use an example
on it and wrap it up and go about your day, right?
Yeah. I mean, I just thought your example with your brother with the snake is actually a perfect metaphor for that. If you get bit by a rattlesnake, you don't put ice and aspirin on it.
Take some aspirin,
take some aspirin and put some ice on it. Your mother was a medical professional. You said she was a nurse. She knew enough that was like, no, we need to go we need to take you to a hospital. We need to get you professional help. This isn't something to play around with. And with mental health, it can be the same way. We tend to play around and be like, well, I know what to do. You just take some aspirin and put some ice on it and you'll be great. No, sometimes you need to see somebody who's been trained to handle this in a better way. And I think that's beautiful, man. It's really, really beautiful. And also, yeah, you mentioned EMDR. Can you tell me briefly? I know most of our listeners probably aren't familiar with that, but that is a therapeutic modality that's usually used with trauma, with treating trauma and symptoms of PTSD. And so I'm curious how EMDR was used to help you in overcoming pornography.
And I can never remember what EMDR stands for, but
eye movement desensitization reprocessing.
Yeah.
It has to do with bilateral stimulation between the left and right hemispheres of the brain.
And I think this is why therapy kind of has that stigma, because back in the day when people would do EMDR, they would have you actually physically move your eyes left to right while you're getting asked these questions. And that can be a little intimidating, but my therapist just has these two little like handheld plastic doohickeys that she turns on. And I just sit there and close my eyes and they just vibrate back and forth and it does the same thing. Yeah. And then the same, she'll just do a guided meditation with me that way. It's just, except it's a little different because when I do the EMDR, she really makes you recognize how your body's feeling when you're thinking about the experience and like the ick scenario or whatever's going on, and recognize that, and then make sure to contrast that in the EMDR with telling yourself affirmations and what you really believe about yourself. And then when you get done, reinforcing that you've worked through it by also expressing what you're feeling in your body again, which when the session's over, it's more like, okay, my breathing has normalized. My heart has stopped beating as fast. I don't have as much tenseness in my forehead. I don't feel like I'm squeezing my arms, things like that. It's interesting how much your body plays into it, and recognizing when you're experiencing something, your body is reacting to it a lot of times. And when you learn to read your body, it also really helps you to recognize, hey, I probably need to change the situation that I'm in or do something else.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I've had a little bit of training in EMDR, and like I said, the only context that I've heard of it being used is with severe trauma. Usually, like when something has happened to you that when you think about this memory, you become completely just physiologically dysregulated. You're all of a sudden your heart's beating out of your chest and you're sweating and you're shaking, and like those kind of symptoms that go along with recalling traumatic events. So it's really interesting to me that that the same techniques can be used to overcome something like, and what you're describing is, it's the same EMDR techniques, is just applied in a slightly different way, for what you're facing. That's awesome. That's great.
No, and that's one of the things that I would always tell my wife, because after our second, she had some pretty bad postpartum, and then our third really bad postpartum. And so it took me a while to warm up to trusting therapists and counselors and medicine and things like that. But I'm grateful for that, because it helped me to realize, hey, I need to see a professional. But I also learned I didn't have any big T trauma growing up, but I had a lot of little T trauma. Yeah. And, that was those experiences where I needed somebody and I didn't have somebody in the moment that I needed it. And that's literally everybody and anybody growing up. But
are you familiar with the ACEs, ACEs score, adverse childhood experiences?
No.
So that is something that's a common thing now used in mental health. Is like there's a list of like what you're talking about that are basically like little T trauma. There's adverse childhood things that can happen to you in childhood, and you have what they call an ACEs score. If this happened to you, that counts as you a point. If this has happened to you, if you experience this, it's a point. And the thing is, those small little little t traumas add up. And if you have a high ACEs score, then you're at risk for not only, it's really interesting because it's not only problems with your mental and emotional health, but high ACEs scores have a strong positive correlation with heart attack and stroke and different physical problems later in life as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting. And that, that goes back to a lot of, the body keeps the score and things like that, that we used to think that, the body and the brain are two different things, but we know now that that's not how it is. Our brains and bodies are one thing together, and what affects one affects the other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we've had you here for about an hour. We told you we'd keep you for about an hour or so, but if you wouldn't mind to maybe kind of get ready to close this out, tell us a little bit about how all this has kind of transpired and transferred into your Instagram channel and what you're doing there. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just like with anything, and in the gospel, you learn that once you're truly fully converted, you want to share it with other people. When I finally felt like I was liberated from just these bands and bonds of pornography and coping with these different things, I just slowly started to, it's funny because if you look at my Instagram, it's like there's nothing from 2014 to 2024. I'm not like a social media person at all. Like, I've turned into an introvert. I am like a recluse. I only hang out with the friends that I've had for a long time, but I just couldn't hold back what I've experienced because I know there's so many other people struggling with this that I had to start sharing about kind of my journey and my story with it. And the other thing is, so kind of what made me really start doing a lot of my videos about the church is my wife and I love The Chosen, and
Amen.
Amen. That's right.
We're big fans, and one of the ways that we like supporting it is, paying for the tickets of the showings in theaters. So on the last 3 episodes of season 4, something in my mind, like something just snapped in my mind. And I was like, I'm sitting in this auditorium with all these other Christians, and as soon as we leave here, this person on the screen that is representing the Jesus that we know from the scriptures isn't who they believe in. They believe in some amorphous triune essence composed of 3 persons. And I'd kind of been struggling with, why do we need to do missionary work if our Christian friends are, such good people and, have great morals just like us. And that was it. I mean, when Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ appeared to Joseph Smith, that changed a lot. That changed 1,600 years of false doctrine about the nature of God. I mean, it's a big deal. The Trinity has only been perpetuated in Christianity because of, in my opinion, cultural hegemony, just because it was forced to be the idea, and it was backed by not only the church, but the political and the law and everything.
Well, what's funny there, Colton, is that there's nothing new under the sun. The accusations that we hear against the Church of Jesus Christ today are a lot of the exact same accusations that the Jews made against the early believers, because they were, at the time, the Jews were the exclusionary. They took great pride in they were kind of racist in a way. Just as far as they were like, look, we're the chosen people, and all the Gentiles out here, and pagans were like the worst thing you could be. That was like, if you were a pagan, that was because we're like, no, we are monotheistic. We worship one true God, period. Right. And so then these followers of Christ came along, and they were like, well, no, we still worship the same God. And they're like, no, you're saying this Jesus guy was divine also. So you're a pagan. You're a pagan just like the other pagans. No, we're not pagans. And so the whole Trinitarian doctrine was born out of a way to try to reconcile these two things for the early Christians to be able to, on one hand, accept the divinity of Jesus Christ, and on the other hand, be able to still say, no, we're monotheistic too. Just we still worship the same God that you do.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, it's a 100% man-made doctrine that is not found anywhere in the Bible. Nowhere in the scriptures is that found.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And so I guess I started making a couple of these videos and talking about, some of these ideas and things. And just last conference was just incredible. And there's a couple of things that I just couldn't get out of my mind. And I'll try and be brief, but, there's all these people just accusing the brethren and saying all these lies and slanders and, bearing false witness against the church and spreading misinformation. And I'm just the kind of guy that I have a hard time with that. And for so long, I've just kind of felt like, well, as good members of the church, we just need to sit back and just stay tight knit with our ward and whatnot, and not really worry about what's on social media. And Elder Holland speaks and he talks about praying in the morning and in the afternoon, and when the night comes, still pray unto the Lord. And it reminded me of something that I'd learned in Revelation chapter 12, talking about how, Satan, or the dragon, was defeated. And in verse 10 and 11, it just says how he was defeated. They heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength and the kingdom of God and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, and by the word of their testimony. And to me, I just realized, and especially there was several talks on John 17, Jesus's high priestly prayer, about becoming one. And I just felt overwhelmingly that for us to be one, we also need to be one in testimony, and we need to stand up against all these things. And that's how we're going to defeat this dragon and defeat the adversary. And I don't think it's a coincidence that in President Nelson's talk, he tells us to read the Kirtland prayer or dedicatory prayer. In verses 29 through 31, I remember it was really late at night. I was reading and I couldn't get some of these things out of my mind. And let me just read these verses to you. And this, I think, because in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 1 through 3, we learn one thing that has to happen before Christ comes again is a falling away has to happen, as well as the Son of Man being revealed, the son of perdition being the man of sin being revealed, the son of perdition. And I also don't think that Satan is working alone. I think he has some employees. And
yeah,
you guys have seen them, about them. And so I was just wondering, when is this man of sin going to be revealed? When is all this stuff going to, when is he going to be confounded? One of the Bible commentaries I read was, basically that this man of sin was going to be confounded or kind of shut up at the last day. And then I'm reading really late at night, the Kirtland dedicatory prayer, starting in verse 29. We ask the Holy Father to confound and astonish and to bring to shame and confusion all those who have spread lying reports abroad over the world against thy servant or servants. If they will not repent when the everlasting gospel shall be proclaimed in their ears, and that all their works may be brought to naught and be swept away by the hail and by the judgments which thou wilt send upon them in thine anger, that there may be an end to lyings and slanders against thy people. For thou knowest, O Lord, that thy servants have been innocent before thee in bearing record of thy name, for which they have suffered these things. And I was just like, wow, I need to, if we need to become one, and it needs to be in testimony and in resolve against all of these employees of the adversary that are spreading these lying reports and slander and accusing the brethren. And it was really out of my comfort zone at first. Like, one of the first videos that I did, it was one night, it was just kind of a silly idea because I had seen some anti stuff on TikTok or Instagram. And one of the things that was going around was people would show old pictures of them wearing their mission tag, and there would be some line on the top, and then it would show a picture of them now liberated and freed from the cult that they were in and all this stuff. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna make one. So okay. I thought I was doing this for God's kingdom, and there was a picture of me as a missionary. And then the next one was me as a missionary holding a copy of the Book of Mormon. I thought that this blue book was the word of God. And then the very next slide was, what did I say? Nothing's changed, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I love the way you. So I'm envious of you. I got it. Number one, for those of you, if you're listening to the audio,
he's envious
podcast,
of you of your beard.
I'm envious of your beard. I'm very. If you're listening to the audio right now, you need to watch the video, dude. Colton has a sweet beard, and I'm totally envious of it. But I'm also envious of the way that you answer critics in such a bold but calm way. Like you don't get. Like, you shut them down, but in a very your voice is calm. You're not insulting. You're not degrading anyone. You just state truth, and it's meant. I really admire that, and I'm jealous of it a little bit because I tend to get emotional. I want to read a really quick quote here from Gad Sad. He is a professor. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Anyway. He said, if you walk by a dark alley and notice that an individual is being attacked and you do nothing, you are a vile coward. Similarly, if you witness the daily murder of truth, reality, and common sense and you do nothing, you are a vile coward. Participate in the battle of ideas. And that gives me chills because what ideas could possibly be more important to participate in than those of eternal significance, those of the gospel of Jesus Christ? Those will affect our eternal destiny. So you're doing great work.
One thing I just want to share with all the saints that are listening is the night I posted that one reel that I was just talking about, nothing really happened. And then the next day it was 2 or 3 days of just straight sewage posted on that thing.
Yeah.
Just absolute trash. And on the end, like, after it had been up for 2 days, my wife was like, you need to take that down. And because I was like, I felt convicted that I had to correct everybody and everything that was being said in the comments.
Yeah.
And I was just like me against the world, it felt like. And it really was like a Joseph Smith moment. It was like this dark adversarial force just trying to drag me down and question if I should have even done that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember waking up one morning and there was a couple of members that started popping up in the comments. And then a handful more started coming up and showing up in the comments. And then more and more and more. And I just realized that people just sometimes people need a little help or a little confidence boost to stand up for what they believe in. And I decided, you know what? I don't mind being in the front lines of that. And
that's right. Be the change that you want to see in the world.
It's really been emotional because obviously I still have bad days, and it's easy to look at my videos and think that I'm know everything about the gospel, but I've just learned line upon line. And I've been reading the scriptures for a long time, and AI has helped a little bit too. So, answering
Okay.
some hard questions. But, there's days that I would pray and, just need a little help or a little boost. And it just blows my mind every single day without fail. Members DM me and just tell me how grateful they are for the stuff that I share. And, I did like a live Instagram the other night, my wife convinced me to do. And there's just so many people that were just like, I've been in a really dark place in my faith and my spirituality, and your videos have helped so much. And
Oh, wow.
just it has just touched me and humbled me, and it just makes me want to keep going. And I just want to keep confounding all and trying to astonish and, get rid of and testify against all of these accusers of the brethren. And I think for these things to be fulfilled, for that man of sin to be confounded and revealed, it's going to happen through the joint effort of members of the church becoming one and standing up against the voices, the choir of the dark voices of the world, as Elder Holland calls them.
That's right.
Tell you what, man. Yeah. You've got a great story. Great story. And I love how you have taken the opportunity and with your kind of redemption story there, and not just sat on it and kept it to yourself, but have taken the opportunity to expound upon it and to share it with others, because it is inspirational. And I hope more and more, and we'll see, just as you have said, you will see more of the saints unite, and the light will continue to grow brighter and brighter. And, as we fight against the forces of evil, it is a spiritual war out there. And, I'm glad to be a part of it, along with you and everything. So,
I think there's definitely the Lord is in this. 5 years ago, Jackson had the idea for this podcast, and he gathered a handful of, invited a handful of people together to talk about it. It's like, listen, I've been thinking about putting together a podcast and just, putting some good out there in the world. There's so much junk out there on the internet, and I had never in my life even heard of a Latter-day Saint podcast or YouTube channel. I mean, at that time, I was like, I'd never even heard of anybody doing this.
Mm-hmm.
But man, since then, it is just blown up, man. There's so many people out there just putting out awesome, like positive content. And it's just, it seems to me like there's just so many people kind of had the same idea at the same time, or similar ideas, and there's no coincidence in that. I think that the Lord really is in this, using the social media and the internet and the tools that we have at our disposal to spread goodness, to try to dispel some of this darkness. And it only takes, and the light does dispel darkness. And the darkness, darkness is not something that Scripture Gems is one of my favorite. I talk about them on our podcast all the time. I don't know if you've ever seen them, John and Jay Fuller.
I haven't.
Man, they are amazing. So they used an example one time talking about light, and one of them was saying he teaches seminary, and he was like, well, one of the things that I thought experiments that I like to do with my seminary class is I say, okay, imagine you have a candle. How much darkness would it take to put out that candle? What if you had a whole room full of darkness? Would that do it? What about if you had a whole stadium full of darkness? What if you had an entire city full of darkness? And they're like, no, I mean, no amount of darkness in the universe could put out that light, because darkness is not a thing. Darkness is the absence of light.
Yeah.
Even if I, feel like your light is just a little candle, it'll dispel the darkness, and no amount of darkness can put it out.
There's definitely days it feels like that. And then members of the church will message me or comment and help me out. And it's just, the community of saints in the restored church is amazing. And the gifts of the Spirit are available to all of us. The priesthood's been restored, the Book of Mormon, the whole thing. It's just incredible.
Amen.
Absolutely. So what's the best way for people out there to follow you?
I've just been sharing stuff on Instagram. It's just my name with the initial to my middle name, just Colton B. Miller. And then I started a TikTok, and I kind of just copy my videos over there, and it's Brother Miller is my TikTok one. But yeah.
Okay. Well, do you have a closing message for us of any kind? Any kind of final thoughts?
I would just say if you don't know where you're at in your faith, read the Book of Mormon cover to cover and ask Heavenly Father those hard, specific questions, and just watch watch the power of the Spirit move across the words of the pages of the Book of Mormon into your heart. And you'll see your heart just become a heart of flesh. Your stony heart will get removed, and it will be traded out with a heart of flesh. And you'll just experience the Spirit, and you'll remember, especially if you've read the Book of Mormon before and had any spiritual experiences, when you read them again, if you've forgotten about them, it's incredible. It's just an amazing experience.
Awesome. Well, Colton, we appreciate your time very much. We've enjoyed getting to know you, and hope to speak with you again. And
and thank you for taking the time out of your day to talk to us, man. I've really enjoyed it. And since now I know that you live in the South, you're an honorary saint in the South.
That's right.
Northwest Arkansas is kind of a melting pot. Since I served in Omaha, and that's the Midwest, I kind of here's what I tell people is we're almost in the South because about an hour south of where I live, there's fire ants.
That's right.
Fire ants are some serious thing. We got them. I got an ant bed right outside. I can see from through my window right here.
Yep.
We don't quite have fire ants, so we're still, we're not quite that's for me. If you live in the South, you've got fire ants in your lawn.
That's right. Absolutely. And the only thing that will kill them is gasoline. Okay. You can buy all the ant killer stuff you want. All they do is eat it and grow bigger. So if you want to kill ants, it's gasoline.
So Colton, man, I've enjoyed this so much, and you are welcome anytime, man. If you ever want to come on and talk to us again, if you ever want to pop in on some Come Follow Me discussion, man, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd love it. I appreciated the invitation, and like I said, I'm new to all this kind of stuff, but I definitely want to keep doing it.
All right, everybody. Yep. For Colton Miller, we are Saints in the South. Until next time, y'all keep on striving.
From the South. Come on.